Lesson 1, climate changers. It's true, we are all climate changers. Nearly all scientists believe that the climate change we're seeing today is caused by humans, or a term called anthropogenic. But what really is climate change? Well, let's dive in.
Climate is very different from weather. Climate is long-term, whereas weather is short-term. Climate can be global, whereas weather is in a certain area. Climate is measured over hundreds of years, to thousands of years, to hundreds of thousands of years, whereas weather is usually measured in day-to-day or month-to-month. Let's look at an example.
Over the course of a week, a desert could receive 10 inches of rain, but over the course of a decade, maybe it's only receiving 10 inches of rain per year. Overall, that desert is still a dry climate. It just had a wet week. Here in Hawaii, our climate is very hot and humid, but we do still have dry times of the year. It takes a lot for the climate to change, like a lot. And you have to remember that Earth is really old, like 4.5 billion years old. And don't get us wrong, climate change has happened over the course of Earth's history. But from what scientists know, this is usually happening and taking hundreds of thousands of years, whereas the changes that we're seeing now are happening over a scale of just a few hundred. These are the fastest we've ever seen. The impact that humans have had on the planet is so drastic that scientists have begun referring to this time period as something different. It's a time period that's completely dominated by human activity, the Anthropocene. I mean, what we're doing is kind of a big deal if the Earth is 4.5 billion years old and we figure out how to drastically change its climate in just a few hundred years. Before it's official, scientists must confirm that the impact that humans have had can be found within the Earth's crust, and then it will be confirmed that we're in the Anthropocene. But regardless, what have humans done to the planet that have made geologists look back on this time period and think that it is completely dominated by humans? We're on course for the 6th mass extinction, where 75% of species could be extinct if we continue down the road of business as usual. We have an enormous increase in emissions associated with burning fossil fuels. These emissions are resulting in climate change, such as changes in ocean chemistry, called ocean acidification, and an increase in frequency of natural disasters, such as hurricanes and floods. There's been a vast increase in plastic pollution in our waterways, likely leaving a fossil record for future generations to discover. There's been a considerable change in our soil chemistry because of the way that we conduct large-scale agriculture and fertilizer use. And finally, which we hope you've heard of, there's been significant ice loss in polar regions on our planet. And honestly, when you lay it out like that, I agree too. It looks like we're in the Anthropocene. Now that I'm out of my tactical gear, what does climate change and the Anthropocene even look like? Well, we're seeing it right before our eyes, and I'm sure you have too. Climate change causes weather patterns to become erratic and unpredictable, and it can affect different regions in different ways. Fires, hurricanes, and floods are becoming more and more severe and happening more and more often. Hotter climates could be causing droughts in one area, but cyclones and hurricanes in a completely different area. Some examples include the wildfires that we're seeing all over the world. In 2019, Australia's bushfires were labeled the worst in Australia's recent history. And in 2020, California experienced a severe wildfire season, causing thousands of people to evacuate from their homes and millions of acres of lands being burned. In a healthy ecosystem, fire is a natural part of a habitat. But with increased temperatures, droughts, and lack of soil health, fire has become out of control. Another example happened just recently. In the state of Texas, a severe snowstorm hit the state and left hundreds of thousands of people without power. This snowstorm was directly linked to climate change. Along with all these other things, climate change causes glaciers and ice sheets to melt near our poles, which results in sea level rise everywhere. Glaciers and ice caps only cover about 10% of Earth's landmass, but they contain 75% of Earth's fresh water. That means that if all of them were to melt, sea level would rise by 230 feet. Sea level rise will be a gradual effect of climate change, but that doesn't mean it's far away. It's happening right now. In Hawaii, our main city center is already experiencing flooding during times of storms and high tides. And cities that are built at sea level, like Venice, Italy, are also experiencing flooding very regularly. And while sea level rise affects everybody, it comes for those who live on coastlines first.
Okay, Climate change is going to create some pretty serious problems. But what causes it anyway? The climate change we're seeing today is caused by the burning of fossil fuels.
But are all fossil fuels from dinosaurs?
No, it's actually from organic matter. So plants or animals or plankton in the ocean, but really it's mostly algae. These living things were buried for millions of years and transformed in these fossil fuels from pressure and heat. There are 3 types of fossil fuels in the 3 different states of matter. Crude oil or petroleum is the liquid form. Petroleum is refined and made into gasoline, diesel, or plastics. When you hear about drilling projects, they're usually drilling for petroleum. Coal is the solid form of fossil fuels. Coal is used for heating homes and generating electricity at power plants. Coal must be mined and dug up from the ground, and is known as the dirtiest fossil fuel because of the harsh chemical it releases when it's burned. And finally, we have natural gas. And yep, you guessed it, that's the gas form of fossil fuels. Natural gas is mostly used for heating homes, generating electricity, and cooking. Natural gas is found in pockets, usually near crude oil deposits. These pockets can span miles. When you hear the word fracking, it means that humans are looking for natural gas within the earth. But what is fracking?
Fracking uses high pressure water with chemicals to split rocks apart to look for those gas pockets. And that can cause mini earthquakes in the area. The chemical-ridden water can pollute nearby water sources, which can contaminate our drinking water and the habitat around it. These are just 2 reasons why environmentalists, human rights activists, and many people criticize fracking.
All of these fossil fuel resources are non-renewable because it takes literally millions of years for them to form.
When burned, which we do constantly for many different reasons, fossil fuels release greenhouse gases into our atmosphere. These greenhouse gases, like carbon dioxide and methane, trap heat within our atmosphere in a phenomenon called the greenhouse effect. This is called the greenhouse effect because the emissions trap heat like the insulating walls of a greenhouse. You know what it's like getting into a hot car in the summer? It's so much hotter inside the car because the heat can't escape. The greenhouse effect works exactly like that. How bad is it really though? Well, get this, there hasn't been this much carbon dioxide in our atmosphere in 650,000 years. Between 1970 and 2004, greenhouse gas emissions have increased by 70%.
Are there any other sources of greenhouse gases?
Oh yes, there's a lot. And by understanding the sources of greenhouse gases, we can better understand how to think of solutions. 2 sources of greenhouse gas emissions are landfills and animal agriculture operations. Landfill is where our trash goes, and as it attempts to decay, it releases methane, a powerful greenhouse gas. Methane is also released at animal agriculture operations. Cows release methane as they digest their food, and at any given time, there's 100 million cows farting on our planet to support the demand for beef. Well, that was a lot to take in, but hey, you just learned the basics of climate change in less than 20 minutes, and most people don't understand any of these concepts, let alone know what to do with this information. Please know that this is definitely the most difficult lesson you're going to learn this week, but you have to understand it to understand everything else.
Scientists have been strongly recommending we get off fossil fuels for over 50 years, and we still haven't done that yet.
We must reduce our greenhouse gases by completely transitioning to renewable and sustainable energy, like solar, tidal, wind, and more.
We all must urge our governments, companies, family members, and friends to reduce their greenhouse gases as well.
And this week, we're going to teach you all how to do just that.
But we also need to protect the parts of the planet that help pull carbon out of the atmosphere, which brings us to the last concept of the day, carbon sinks. You all know that plants take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen. That means all plants are carbon sinks because they're taking carbon out of the atmosphere. Protecting and rebuilding forests is just one way that we can help minimize the impacts of climate change. The ocean is another huge carbon sink. That is why restoring health in the oceans is one of the best ways to save our planet. It's also one of the reasons why we became marine biologists.
Before we leave you today, we want to tell you one thing that you can do right now to help reverse climate change. Every single one of you can set the homepage on your phone, tablet, laptop, or computer to Ecosia, a search engine that can serve as an alternative to whatever search engine you have now. Ecosia plants trees with the searches that you make, and I've been using it for a few years and already planted over 100 trees. Ecosia is completely verified, so no, you don't have to buy a plastic bracelet to plant your tree. Every single one of you can do this today and encourage your friends and family to do the same thing too. And we can help rebuild forests and reverse climate change together. See you tomorrow, climate changers.